this video, I'm going to show you how I turned some empty wall space above my fold-down workbench into this organized, handy area for my tools so I can quickly grab what I need for any project that I'm working on. Here is a complete list of materials and tools that I use to complete this project. There are some optional steps to complete this project, and any materials and tools that I use to complete them are indicated with an asterisk. Also, any purchases that I made for this project are linked for you in the video description down below. So let's get started. In this first step, I'm going to construct a frame that the pegboard will be screwed into. You want something that's going to prop the pegboard off of the wall at least a ½ inch so that you can get your hooks into the pegboard without scratching up your wall. To save some money, I constructed this frame out of a scrap piece of plywood that I had from a previous project. I set my circular saw up with a guide so that my cuts would be exactly 1½ inches on each piece. If you don't have any scrap wood laying around to cut your own pieces, feel free to go and purchase some 1x2s. They would work really well for this project to construct the frame. Out of this 6-foot piece of plywood, I ended up cutting 4 1½ inch wide pieces for this project. Next, I took out my tape measure and started marking those boards to size. 2 of them would be the top and bottom of the frame, and I wanted those to be 5 feet long. I wanted the height of the frame to be 3 feet tall, or 36 inches. But when fitted together, the top and bottom pieces would take up 3 inches of this space. So I actually measured 33 inches on the smaller boards that would run the left side, center, and right side of the frame. It's critical that all of these boards be the same length. So to ensure this, I stacked them on top of each other, got the ends lined up as close as I could, and then ran my saw down both sides one more time just for good measure. And here's what we have so far. This next step that I'm going to run through is completely optional. Since I'm using a scrap piece of plywood, I just wanted to doctor up those boards a little bit so they looked a bit nicer for my project. So I got out my sander and I started sanding down those boards. I usually sand in a 2-step process. First, I'll grab a very rough grit sandpaper and go over all the boards. Next, I'll grab a fine grit sandpaper and I'll go over those boards once again. This next part is again completely optional. I just want my pegboard to somewhat match the workbench that I recently built, the one that you see me working on right now in this video. So I decided to stain the boards with a matching stain. I'm using a provincial wood finish. When this stain dries completely, I'm going to finish it up with a polyurethane sealer. This way the stain won't leave marks on my wall when I get it installed. And now I'm ready to start installing the pegboard frame. I wanted mine to be about 3 inches above the height of my workbench. I marked the height and then grabbed my stud finder so that I could locate the studs behind the drywall. With this information, I started to develop my plan for installing the pegboard frame. The first board I'm going to install will be the one on the bottom. These blue circles represent the spots on the frame where I was able to locate a stud behind the wall with my stud finder. And I'm going to use 3-inch wood screws in order to secure the board in place in these spots. But I still wanted some added support at the very edges of the pegboard frame. Unfortunately, These spots did not have a stud behind the wall. So I'm going to use some heavy-duty wall anchors in these locations, and these are marked by the purple circles on the frame. Now on to installing that first board. The first thing I did was take out my level, line up my board with my marks on my wall, and drill some pilot holes so that I could see on the wall where everything was going to be screwed in. These are the heavy-duty wall anchors that I purchased for this project. On the package, it comes with directions about drill bit size that you should use for the anchors. So I took out my 5/16 inch drill bit and I widened those pilot holes so that the anchors would fit through the drywall. You have to squeeze each one of those wall anchors together so that they'll fit through the hole in your drywall. And then once you put a screw in through there, they'll expand on the back side of the wall. So grab your hammer and pound those wall anchors in there. The screws that came in the package with the wall anchors have a head on them that will stick up into my pegboard, and I didn't want that to happen. I want the pegboard to be flush against the frame, and so I chose to countersink those screws using the same 5/16 inch drill bit. You don't want to drill too deep, just far enough that you can get the head of the screw to lie underneath the surface of the board. And here I am installing that board. Be sure to use a level to check your progress. Use those pilot holes that you drilled before as a guide to make sure that your board is in the proper place. Use the wall anchor screws to drill into your wall anchors, and I used 3-inch wood screws to drill directly into the studs. And now back to the drawing board. The next piece of frame that I'm going to install is going to be this orange piece, the very left side of the pegboard. There is no stud behind this piece, and so I needed to use the wall anchors again in order to secure the board against the wall. These locations are indicated by the purple circles again. I repeated the same process as on the first board. I placed the board, made sure it was straight with a level, and then took out my drill and made some pilot holes to mark its location into the wall. Widened the holes with the 5/16 inch drill bit, and then hammered in the wall anchors. I used the 5/16 inch drill bit to countersink the wall anchor screws, and then installed the board. Back to the drawing board again for the third piece. This will be the middle board that I've indicated in yellow. This board has a stud directly behind it, and so I just used 3-inch wood screws to attach it in the locations that are indicated with the blue circles. I used a level to ensure that the board was straight, drilled some pilot holes, and then screwed in those 3-inch wood screws. Back to the drawing board again one more time. Next, I'll install this green board at the top. Once again, the wall anchors are indicated with purple circles, and the 3-inch screws that are drilled directly into the studs are indicated with the blue circles. And the last piece, indicated in the black color, will have only wall anchors in it. Drill in your pilot holes for both of those boards. Widen the pilot holes that will have wall anchors drilled into them with the 5/16 inch drill bit, and then pound in your wall anchors. Don't forget to countersink your wall anchor screws, and then screw in those two pieces. Use the wall anchor screws into the wall anchors and the 3-inch wood screws into the studs. And now we're on to the final step. For this one, I needed an extra pair of hands to help me line up the pegboard against the frame and also hold it in place while I used 1/2-inch wood screws to secure the pegboard to the frame. I counted the number of peg holes across the pegboard and also up and down the pegboard so that I could evenly space my screws. And then I just made sure that the placement of the screws on the top side lined up with the placement on the bottom. And there you have it. Here is the installed pegboard. And now the fun part begins. Grab a pegboard organizing kit and start filling up your pegboard with all of your tools. If you found this video helpful, please hit that like button and consider subscribing to my channel. Happy DIYing!